The reading this morning is a responsive reading. If you'll turn to number 551 in the gray hymnal. I'll take the regular type and the congregation can respond with the italicized. It's called Earth Teach Me. Earth, teach me stillness as the grasses are stilled with light.
Earth, teach me suffering as old stones suffer with memory.
Earth, teach me caring as parents who secure their young.
Earth, teach me courage as a tree which stands all alone.
Earth, teach me limitation as the ant which crawls on the ground.
Earth, teach me freedom as the eagle which soars in the sky.
Earth, teach me resignation as the leaves which die in the fall.
Earth, teach me regeneration as the seed which rises in the spring.
Earth, teach me to forget myself as melted snow forgets its life.
Earth, teach me to remember kindness as dry fields weep with rain.
Good morning. Since today is a day of transition as we move from our summer series to next week's in-gathering and new beginnings with Reverend Jamie, we would also like to express our heartfelt, deep gratitude to our 8 summer series pulpit guests this summer and the lessons that they shared from their own life transitions. Thank you all. Many of them mentioned spirituality as part of their journeys in some way or another, in some words or another. Weekly, we affirm that we create spirituality and community beyond boundaries. What does spirituality mean? And how can we recognize it? Today, I'd like to share just a few others' interpretations out of the thousands that there are out there and maybe that you've read about or discussed. If you like to eat, or if you like to think, today is a smorgasbord of ideas. When asked to define spirituality, St. Augustine wrote, "What is grace? I know, until you ask me." Well, spirituality sometimes is more easily felt than defined or expressed. As in saying our last goodbye to a loved one, maybe the very last goodbye. Hiking up a canyon, maybe one of our glorious canyons in the fall colors. Or listening to a favorite piece of music, or one of the gifts that we get to hear every Sunday here. To that end, I define spirituality as the awareness of a meaningful connection with the sacred whole, with something greater. That something is sacred because it speaks to our most cherished ideals. Communion with it is meaningful because it enlightens, it empowers us. The word spirit itself originates from the Greek word for breath, the act of breathing, like spirituality, is normally unconscious, but life-giving. The air we breathe is shared by all living things, just as spirituality arises from our interconnections with all beings and with the world. Transcendentalists, and Becky happened to mention some of them last week, such as Emerson, Thoreau, Margaret Fuller, redefine spirituality to mean any human experience in which a person feels one with that which transcends him or her or them. Emerson lamented how religion had subdued the spiritual impulse. Yet he insisted that there is a depth in those brief moments of experience and illumination that make them more real than all other experience. How do we recognize spirituality? In his book, Four Spiritualities, Peter Richardson says, it is a manifest in a quality of connectedness to life, to the cosmos. It is an integrity and wholeness. Spiritual people grasp the big picture. They display a sense of proportion that engenders humility. But is there a more tangible measure than that? Maybe spirituality is also manifested in one's actions. Some speak of it as a two-stroke process, the upward stroke of inner growth, being more in tune with the universe, and then the downward stroke of improving the physical reality around oneself as a result of that inward change. Spirituality transforms people, and they in turn maybe transform their surroundings. It does not necessarily retire forever to solitude and prayer. It also can engage humanitarian and environmental troubles. For example, the Dalai Lama says that the highest spiritual ideal of Buddhism is to generate compassion for all sentient beings and to work for their welfare. Despite my attempts to define it, spirituality remains mostly an enigma to me. When I was a child, the world felt safe and whole and meaningful. I was raised in a rural eastern Montana community where both people and nature were reliable and on the whole benevolent. I did have a spiritual life as a child, as many children have spiritual lives. Feelings of awe, wonder, compassion, experiences of connection, mystical experiences, images that held theological meanings. Eastern Montana fields and badlands were my playground. I can remember moments sitting on a hill with my dog, with grasses, cactus, wild sagebrush all around me, the smell of wild sagebrush all around me. Vast Montana sky overhead, insects and lizards buzzing and brushing by me. Feeling that the boundary between me and the hills, between me and that eternal sky, was not clearly defined, but a gentle merging of me into them. For me, such moments were mystical moments, interludes of feeling a transcendent sense of oneness with something larger than myself. Maybe you, with our glorious mountains here, something larger than all of us. For me, they were moments of total peace, of total contentment, and they were potent. Such childhood experiences have been researched and documented by Edward Robinson in his work, The Original Vision. In interviews with adult after adult, Robinson heard women and men recalling religious, spiritual experiences from their early years, experiences which were accompanied by a profound sense of certainty, of connection, of hope and meaning, although just what that meaning was often seemed elusive. Albert Einstein's spiritual story also begins during his childhood, which sparked both his scientific and religious journeys. His parents' disdain for organized religion did not deter him from striving to understand that unseen and mysterious force behind all things. As his encounters with modern science increased, his passion for religious ritual and observance waned, but his hunger to understand the unseen, the mysterious, and what he likes to call the mind of God, his spiritual hunger, did not diminish. It was instead merged with his scientific quest. And he wrote, "Everyone who is seriously involved in the pursuit of science becomes convinced there is a spirit manifest in the laws of the universe, a spirit vastly superior to that of humankind, and one in the face of which we must feel very, very humble." The more Einstein explored, discovered, and learned about the universe, the more he felt connected to it and at home in it. Science became for him a path to religious and even mystical experience, a path to awe at the regularity and reality of a universe of harmony and regularity, and wonder and amazement at a universe that will always remain, at some level, a mystery, which he also called his spirituality. What were such childhood moments for you? What did you know deep in your heart to be true, spiritually true? For example, listen to this poem, "The Forgotten Language" by Sheryl Silverstein. "Once I spoke the language of the flowers. Once I understood each word the caterpillar said. Once I smiled in secret at the gossip of the starlings. And I shared a conversation with a housefly in my bed. Once I heard and answered all the questions of the crickets and joined the crying of each falling, dying flake of snow. Once I spoke the language of the flowers. How did it go? How did it go? We know, with childhood certainty, we know. And then sometimes we forget. The Transcendentalist movement of the early 19th century affirmed that each person can have direct experiences and knowledge of the divine, of the sacred. Children's vision, they claimed, was fuller and clearer, but that clarity faded as they grew, and their minds and hearts became cluttered and confused with the things of the world. When I was a child, it was a rich and nourishing spiritual life. The snowfalls were pristine and magical. Those rugged eastern Montana hills teemed with life. Of course, there were hornets and rattlesnakes, as well as meadowlarks. Sometimes there were bullies and shadows and loneliness, and sitting or falling onto cactus sometimes. But at some deeper level, I felt assurance that there was a larger net of safety, of care that would cradle me. It was also the reality I experienced on a regular basis. The one I trusted, weekly Sunday school, being the church organist for 4 years in high school, singing with the choir way high in the choir loft under my father's conducting. When I was a child and adolescent, I experienced these three moments of spiritual knowing, an interconnected, nurturing community of family and church, and a musical and outdoor culture that supported the feeding of my spirit. So much has changed, yet so much remains the same. Now there is still that spiritual knowing, yet awareness of the mystical wonder and unexplained around us. But it's this mystery from childhood through now that gives me goosebumps every day. The prospect of our cultivating compassion from a cold universe, of beholding beauty from the chaos around us, of molding meaning from futility and absurdity. To live a spiritual life, we must first find the courage to enter into the desert, into those badlands of our own loneliness, and to change it by gentle and persistent efforts into a garden of solitude with meaning. At its finest, the human spirit upholds life and marshals the courage to persevere against that void of the unknown, to travel our own paths of spirituality. So there are also a couple of other examples, other interpretations of spirituality that 3 of our members will share with you. The first is from Eckhart Tolle, who is a German-born global spiritual teacher and author, whose teachings focus on the awakened state of consciousness.
Eckhart Tolle said, being spiritual has nothing to do with what you believe and everything to do with your state of consciousness.
Richard Rohr is a Franciscan priest and writer on spirituality. He is based right here in Albuquerque's Center for Action and Contemplation.
Richard Rohr said, people who have had any genuine spiritual experience always know that they don't know. They're utterly humbled before mystery.
And finally, Marjorie Pay Hinckley was the wife of LDS President Gordon Hinckley, but she was known for her kindness and encouragement of anyone struggling, not just their members.
Marjorie Pay Hinckley said, "True spirituality makes you loving and grateful and forgiving and patient and gentle and long-suffering. True spirituality breathes reverence into every act and deed."
Thank you, 3 of you. For spirituality to endure, as Will James surmised, perhaps it needs nothing more than possibility and permission. Maybe our goal should be to live a spiritual life not only in radical inclusion, as we talk about here, but in radical amazement. Get up in the morning, look at the world in a way that takes nothing for granted. To be spiritual is to be amazed. So may you endure with possibility and permission. May you get up in the morning and be radically amazed. May you find and live your spirituality. Namaste.